Welcome to Sports Talks at Calle Serrano. My name is André Gribel. I'm a sports lawyer based in Portugal. I'm a Brazilian sports lawyer. I have experience in France and England, and I've been working for the past year and a half with FIFA and involving training compensation, solidarity contribution issues. The idea behind this channel is having the impressions from people from the various areas of sports, sharing their opinions on current subjects, and always helping with the exchange of ideas and broadening one's network. Our opening webinar, where we discuss the effects of COVID-19 on players' contracts, will have the participation of Enrico Benvenuto, Jaime Esteves, Lucho Mazei, Santiago Zambrano. Before we start our discussions, I would like you guys to make a quick introduction about yourselves. Please, Enrico.
So hi everybody, my name is Enrico Benvenuto. I graduated in law in 2015 in Rome with a thesis related to the sports law contract in Italy and in Europe. After that, I had the opportunity to study abroad in the States, where I obtained my LLM degree in US law. And after that, I did like a master in international sports law, where I met all of you guys, all these beautiful professional. And now I'm working in Hamburg. I'm working for an international company who provides recording and data analysis for professional and non-professional players.
Hello everyone, I'm Jaime Esteves. I'm a sports lawyer working in my hometown in Sevilla in a law firm where I currently working on corporate and sport law. During this quarantine due to the coronavirus pandemic, I watched many cases also in the famous ERTES. And my previous sports experience was in the legal department of Estudiantes, a basketball club based in Madrid. And I'm very happy to be here with you guys.
Hi everyone, my name is Lucio Mazzei. I'm an Italian sports lawyer and I graduated in law at Bocconi University some years ago already. And then I had the possibility to work for the Italian Football Association, FIGC. And then I moved to Madrid, where I took the LLM in International Sports Law, where I happily met all of you guys. It was a real pleasure to meet all of you there. And I'm happy that we can share all of our thoughts and experiences also in this channel. Then after my LLM in Madrid, I moved to Uruguay, and it was an amazing experience because I had the opportunity to work and to live in a completely different continent and environment. After that, I came back to Europe. I have been working in Milan at Osborne Clarke, an international law firm, and now I'm working here in Madrid in the Balvers Sports Law Firm.
Well, hello. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Santiago Zambrano. I'm from Guayaquil, Ecuador. I graduated on 2015. After that, I did a master on intellectual property. And after that, well, I was with you guys doing our sports law course. It was very exciting, it was a very a unique opportunity that we had. So I'm very happy to see you again, everyone achieving all your goals. I'm happy to see you on the industry. I did my intern in Hamburg in Germany, which was a very, very good opportunity for me. And after that, I came to Guayaquil because, as many as you know, well, Ecuador has a lot of things to do on sports law. So I opened my own law firm called Con Legal Sports, and now I'm working with some first division clubs, players, agents. So I'm very happy to be with you, and let's talk a little bit about this, right? Let's start.
Exactly. We are here today because of FIFA's latest circular, when the Siege of Organized Football determined that the pandemic of COVID-19 is to be considered force majeure, which means that contract modification because of this virus will be decided by FIFA's council as a final decision given the circumstances. And also to maintain the integrity of club competition, agreements that are to expire in the end of the season, which would be in June in Europe, may be extended to the end of the season. And this will be interesting because this scenario can result in contracts being longer than 5 years. FIFA states that a contract does, the minimum of a player contract should be 6 months and the maximum 5 years. But this extraordinary situation might result in contracts longer than that. And also new contracts will have their commencement date delayed to the beginning of next season, following these guidelines. They're not mandatory, they are guidelines that FIFA instructs the member associations to follow to allow clubs that currently have these players not to lose them for the eventual final matches of the extended seasons. That seasons are, we are aware now that seasons will surely be extended in Europe. There's no way they will end in the end of June anymore. And also in the event of overlapping seasons, because FIFA once again suggests that the member associations organize themselves. So maybe the season in Italy will end before the season in Portugal, and so on. So this will create overlapping seasons, even within the same logic, because we mostly have the logic for Europe, July to June, and to South America, January to December. But even within the same logic, we will have overlapping seasons. So FIFA gives priority and says that it should be given priority to the club where the player is currently registered, which would be the former club in a transfer. And this also results on the obligations of the new clubs, because they then can delay the payment of the transfer fee to the actual moment when they receive the player, and not to 1st of July, which is mostly the time when a player will be registered with the new club. And also because of that, FIFA usually, FIFA says that the member associations must, with the advance of 1 year, inform FIFA of their transfer windows, their registration periods. But given these unusual circumstances where we don't know when seasons are going to end, FIFA gives the national associations the freedom to adapt the registration period to their realities, respecting this 16 weeks per year limit of registration, usually divided in summer and winter registrations. And finally, concluding this first impression of mine, players that will be without a contract because of COVID-19, or because their contract will end now, in the middle of the situation where clubs and players must agree on the terms of an extension, they will be free to be registered outside of the transfer periods, and this should create interesting situations as well. So having made this debrief of some points of FIFA's circular, I would like to hear your thoughts, Enrico, and the situation in Italy, and Jaime Spain, Lucho in Italy as well, and Santi in Ecuador, regarding these first points of FIFA Circular.
So thank you, Andrea, for this introduction. That is always, as always, complete. So first, I want to say that we are facing a huge period of crisis. All the economy is crashing down, and of course, like the sports industry, is also very affected from this. So if you think that actually the highest organization of international sports, that is the CEO decided to postpone the Olympic Games of Tokyo 2021 because of this virus, and that only other 2 times this happened, and was during the 2 World War. So that lets you understand the type of crisis that we are living now. I think that the sport industry is facing this crisis, and this virus has the effect of the snowball effect, because starting will overwhelm everything from the top to the bottom, and this starting from the league. The game are not, the league are stopped, so clubs cannot play. The player cannot perform their contract. So this means that everything stopped, and there will be a lot of cases around that. So FIFA, as you correctly said before, issued this guideline in April, and this guideline actually said that the contract should be extended for until the end of the new season. But this is only easy when you say it, but is not easy at all when you have to do it. Some of the reasons are the one you mentioned before. So the overlapping of the season, contract ending, so player would be free and they can actually decide to move to another club during the season, because the season will actually continue probably. We don't know actually, but we hope that season will continue, and that would be probably during, especially in early from June to July, August. It depends a lot. They were talking also, UEFA was talking about finishing the UEFA Champions League, doing like a final 8 with 1 game only for team. And that would be for sure very entertaining, but it's very, rare as a situation, especially because how we know football, we used to see 2 games, especially in Champions League. We were waiting for that, but also this rush to play the UEFA Champions League brought a lot of new cases. If we think about the game between Atalanta and Valencia, that actually they said that they create like a pandemia in Valencia and as well in Milan, where Atalanta was playing, because of course there were like 60,000 people there cheering for their club, and the stadium, they were not actually ready to face this kind of emergency. So just everybody went in, everybody hugged each other. There were a lot of goals, so a lot of hugs, and yes, so this snowball effect actually will inevitably contaminate all football, because as I said before, like how can you actually force a club to continue a contract with a player that don't want anymore? Same thing on the opposite side. You cannot force actually a player to stay in a club where he is not playing, especially during the period of European Cup that was also suspended. So this creates a lot of actually problems. So the solution that FIFA gave was kind of very simple, but it's not simple at all if you actually see it in reality. So yes, so the solution for FIFA was to extend the contract, and they actually asked all the stakeholders of football to try to find a common deal, a common ground. So we had example of Italian clubs like Juventus that find actually a solution on cutting the salary of their players. But we also have opposite example like Barcelona. Barcelona firmly denied the possibility to cut their salary. So you can understand that this is a very complicated situation, and the FIFA just said, like, you know, I gave you some guidelines, but federation should argue with the stakeholder, so with the clubs, and find a solution for that. I think that this is a very this is something that FIFA does all the time. You know, sometimes I think that issue guideline is not enough, because you leave room for a lot of different opportunities. And in this field, especially because we're talking about of a globalized world, the sports field is globalized, so everything is strictly connected, and we should have like some guidelines that are more than guidelines, you know, something that just say like, okay guys, you have to do like this because this is a situation of crisis. We were not prepared, nobody was prepared for this, so we just have to do what is better for the game. So we, the club, have to cut 20% of the salary, or the players should decide to, you know, don't take 20% of the salary, something like that. This is actually something that is reasonable for the top league. So we're talking about Serie A, Bundesliga, Liga, or the top tiers level. So of course, in that case, you know, there are professional players who own millions of euro, so they will not have any problem on paying the rent. But when you talk about semi-professional player or third division, like in Italy, Lega Pro, or third division in Germany, or whatever, Segunda B in Spain, there you have a big problem, because you cannot ask the player to just cut their salary, because they're getting 1,500 euro, and you know, they cannot just decide to dump, you know, no, I will not get the money this month, because they still have to pay the rent. So I think that is, as I told before, is like something that involves all the level of sports, from the top to the bottom. And I think that it's very probable that there is a high probability that we will have a lot of claim that will go in front of the FIFA DRC, and also on the player statute committee, because yes, good sense sometimes is not enough. And a good thing that that FIFA said in the circular is that the federation cannot find cannot decide one way what to do. So they must have like the agreement between the stakeholders. So the agreement between the federation, for instance, and the player. So with a collective bargaining agreement, maybe something like that, or the agreement will not be valid under the eyes of FIFA. I think that is very important, because if not, a federation can just issue the regulation they want, and the club will be submitted to that. In this case, I think that this is a very important clause that sometimes people don't understand properly, but I think it's very, very important. And also another thing that I think is important is the criteria with that the FIFA judges should use to decide if an agreement is fair or not. And there are three criteria. One is the good faith. So if the deal is they did it in good faith, so without using you know, a position of power between the clubs and the players, because most of the time the clubs have you know, the power, the bargaining power. The second actually criteria is that the deal is reasonable. So must be reasonable. Also the way they did it, so the percentage and actually the criteria they use to do it, and also must be proportionate. So the cut must be, or the decision should be equal for everybody. and should actually work for all the leagues in general. So I think that will be very difficult to find agreement, especially between smaller team or lower league category, because they don't have the same amount of money to, decide just to cut their salary.
Well, first of all, to comment and to talk about, we are talking about the FIFA guidelines. FIFA, in my opinion, leave all the responsibility to the clubs and players, and taking into account that clubs and players, the players who are about to finish their contracts, probably dismiss a previous offer to renew the contract, it make even more difficult the negotiation between these parties. But as I heard Emilio Silvero, FIFA legal director, on the radio last day, on Monday, sorry, he kind of gave a warning to the players, remembering them that FIFA is the competent authority to register player in the event of a transfer or a loan. So it makes, I think, it gives an idea to the player who are about to finish the contract to negotiate and not to make an unilateral decision, because in that case he won't play until the next season, and only will be able to train or play friendly games. So I agree with Emilio Garcia Silvero, with the legal director, because they sorry, I'm
Jaime, do you want me to continue? Can I continue? Can I continue with what Jaime was saying? Okay. So, well, yeah, our colleague Jaime is having a small problem, but he will fix it very soon. Okay, so I'm thinking very alike as Enrico was saying. I consider that FIFA guidelines are very soft or very warm for the small clubs. I mean, if you're a big club, there are some options that you can arrange yourself to continue, but for the small clubs or for clubs that mainly depend or have their budget established on regular incomes, this is going to be a very, very problematic moment. Not now, but I consider this is going to be a long-term problem for the next couple of years until their economy is established. For example, a lot of clubs will need to sell. If a lot of people go out to the street to sell, it's the market, so it will go down the prices. So maybe big clubs will have money, and they will get good talent players or young players for new prices. I believe this is going to have a lot of repercussion on the next years. This is not something that we will see here in 3 months when hopefully everything is starting. Maybe we will see matches again, players. Maybe we will see the registration periods open again. But this is not something that we will see as we have come through all these years in the last maybe 5 years, since 2015, 2012 maybe, where we have seen a huge amount of money being moved by football. I don't know, maybe this was the needle to break the bubble that was around football. Maybe this will open the eyes to establish a new suggestions. I see a lot of innovation through sports industry, not only football, and I'm looking forward to see this innovation. What I can say about my personal experience in Ecuador, well, we are a dollarized economy. We've been we have been hit very hard by COVID-19. So we don't have in our mind what's going to happen on football or other sports, but they're starting to think about this. So club has come to me and asked me, okay, what can we do? Should we pay the players? Of course, they're asking. I'm not going to reduce my salary, so they are not sitting in the same table right now. Okay, I think football, especially football, is not going to be a buffet anymore. It's going to be a self-service. And you see that the line is very big on your back, so you will have to start choosing better the ingredients or the things or the topics that you will want to put on your dish, because as I said before, this is going to be a long-term problem that needs solutions on long term, not solutions for August. I'm sorry, my mother. Okay. Well, so this is something that I believe it's going to happen. I'm worried about the economy on football on small countries such as my country. But well, this is time to innovate, and I believe these special talks that we're having, especially the ones at Calle Serrano, are very helpful for us. So that's my mother. Okay, so I invite everyone, not just us, but everyone involved on sports industries, psychologists, intermediaries, everyone that is working through this industry to find a solution on long term. So please go ahead, continue.
Yes, yeah. I agree with all of you guys. I hope you can hear me well. And I would like to focus a little bit on the Italian situation. As I told you before, I used to work for the Italian Football Federation, FIGC, and today FIGC issued some guidelines regarding the health protocol. It's very important for me to say this because we can observe that for the first time since this coronavirus started, like the Italian Football Association took some important decisions. So this health protocol is based on 5-6 key points. The first one is that starting from May, we don't know the date yet, but it should be around like the 10th of May. Football clubs, professional football clubs, will be allowed to have a closed pre-training camp, something like a new summer preparation, like a summer training camp. And this closed pre-training camp will be supervised by an equipe of doctors, all the doctors of the football clubs, which will lead the health screenings before the training camp. the football players will have to do 2 or 3 days of screenings or of checks, control, and only if they have the authorization from the doctors of the club, they will be allowed to start training again. There will be several tests, more specifically molecular tests and the serological tests. And another important thing is that football players will be free to train only after the club paying, like its own expense, will have sanitized all the places where football players will stay, such as the locker room, the hotel, the football pitches, the sporting centers, the gyms where they train. And another important thing to highlight is that the same will happen for referees. So also all the referees will have to do like a pre-training camp all together, all in one and only place. And they will have to comply with all the requisites that are typical for football players. And last but not least, FIGC said today that Italian professional football, which is composed of Italian Serie A, Italian Serie B, and Serie C. So in Italy, we have exactly 100 professional football clubs. All the leagues will not start again together. Probably Serie A will start first, then Serie B, then Serie C. It is a procedure in Italian called a scaglioni, so a kind of step by step. And talking about like the general situation of the football system in Italy, as Enrico Benvenuto already said before, I have to admit that the suspension of professional football will lead to several consequences, and it will have a huge, huge impact on the football economy in Italy, but I will say on the Italian economy in general, because you all know that people are crazy for football in Italy, but football in Italy is not only a locura, like they say here in Spain, but it's one of the main industries of the country. Just to let you know, the incomes related to the professional football in Italy are of a quantity of about 5 billions of euros. So 5 billions, my friends. It's a huge, huge quantity of money. And just taking as an example, last season, the Serie A revenues were about 3 billions of euros, coming from respectively from TV rights, player trading, commercial rights, and tickets for the match, like tickets, single tickets, and seasonal tickets. So, as of course, even if the Italian Serie A and the Italian Serie B will continue, so the season will be ended, I'm pretty sure that it will be ended without spectators, without fans, without supporters. And it means that there will be no revenues from the stadiums, from the tickets for the clubs. And imagine that I read some days ago that in case of a permanent stop of Italian professional football, the economical loss will be around 700 millions of euros. It's like a crazy quantity of money.
So, Lucio, sorry to interrupt you. So I think that what you just said is strictly related with the fact that probably football in Italy will start again a scaglioni or gradually, because of course people wants to see the Serie A. Some people, less person, let's say, would like to see Serie B. Very little would like to see Serie C, Lega Pro. So I think that this is strictly connected with what you said, because of course, like the football industry in Italy is really something amazing. Like we have like very important clubs like Juventus, very well known, like a lot of superstar player playing in Serie A, and this is actually affecting really in a bad way also the economy. And I'm pretty sure that even if they start, they will start. If they start again, as you said, probably fan will not be allowed, but at least they can recover some money from the TV rights. That maybe that is already something for them. So I really think that this crisis, as you said, will turn down a lot of clubs, maybe not Serie A clubs, probably some Serie B club, for sure Lega Pro clubs, because in the third division, a lot of owners are actually industrial men. So they have their own company, and probably a company that make a lot of money. So they can usually afford to have a club, to invest some of their own money, because in the third division there's no TV rights, there's no a lot of revenue from the stadium. There is just like a 10% of probably the income of the club. So when the owner of the industry in crisis that is closed at the moment should face the decision: should I go on with my family business, or should I continue to put money inside a football club? The answer, I think, is pretty much obvious. He will choose the easy industry.
Yeah. You are right. I'm absolutely I absolutely agree with you. And I just would like to ask my colleague Jaime, hoping that he solves his technical problems with his laptop, and that I explained the situation in Italy. And we all know that Italy and Spain are very, very like similar as countries. So I would like to ask him if like this, I mean, the huge impact that coronavirus virus will have on Italy will be the same in Spain. How is the situation among the clubs of the second division, third division? Is it will happen something similar to Italy or something different? Please explain us.
Thank you, Lucho. As you said, Spain and Italy are very similar in everything, not just in football. To make an idea, to have an idea in mind, the football industry in Spain represent more than 1% of the gross domestic product. So we are talking about serious quantity of money. Yes, today has been reported that the second division B and the third division has been cancelled, except for the team who was currently for the team who were currently in the promotion playoffs spot. So they will play in, as soon the pandemic is eliminated, they will play, if it's possible, in a sole stadium to avoid trips and everything. The playoffs will be reduced to a single game. That's for the non-professional football. In first division, in La Liga and La Liga Smart Bank, the second division, it seems like we have an ideology matter. There are the National Federation, represented by Luis Rubiales, and La Liga, represented by Javier Tebas. Javier Tebas looks like a lonely warrior. He's fighting against the federation and the sports government institution because he's aware of the importance of the football, and he's only being supported by MediaPro, the TV rights holder. The 75% of the TV rights have already been paid to the clubs. And the president of MediaPro said that the rest of the Liga has to be played and has to be finished on the pitch, not off the pitch. So I think the best idea is to have the football back as soon as possible, and obviously playing the games behind closed doors. We will lose the money made by the ticket sales, but we maintain the money generated through the TV rights. I think it's all I can say about the current situation in La Liga.
Very, very, very interesting, and you answered very, very well to my questions. So I think Italy and Spain are facing something very similar, and I only would like to add you some and to let you know some other things about the Italian situation, and especially I would like to highlight that. I mean, in my opinion, the AIC, which is the Football Player Union, and the Lega Serie A, and respectively Serie B and Serie C, have to reach an agreement. They must do it, because otherwise there will be worse consequences. There was like I read an article some days ago where there was written that the reduction of the 20% of the salaries for this season could be decisive in order not to fire most of the workers of the clubs. You know why? Because football clubs could save until 300 million of euros with this 20% of the reduction of the salaries, and this quantity of 300 millions of euros could be decisive in saving Italian football, in avoiding that most of the third division Serie C clubs, so third division, and also many of the second division Serie B go on bankruptcy. It is so important.
Exceptional circumstances demand exceptional measures. Just before we move to the next point, I'll let Santi add that he wanted to say something.
Yes. Actually, I would like to add also that the possibility to incorporate sponsors to the clubs. I remember once, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Bayern Munich rescued Borussia Dortmund from bankruptcy. So maybe that will be an option. I know everyone's limited by their money, but football is not first division, as we were mentioning. So maybe there could be possibilities to sell future rights. For example, okay, I would say the future rights.
I cannot hear you very well, Santi.
Yes. You're saying, Lucho?
No, that we cannot hear you very well.
You couldn't hear me. Okay, I don't know. Maybe now can you hear me better? Yeah.
It's a little bit cutting the sound.
Okay. I don't know. Let me check my Wi-Fi. It's supposed to be right. Okay, so as I was mentioning, maybe one option is to sell some future rights to incorporate them for the small clubs, for the second, third division clubs, sell future rights of their players, of their well, they won't have TV rights, or not many of them, but it would be a very interesting option, such as the one that Bayern Munich did with Borussia Dortmund to avoid the bankruptcy. That was the only thing I wanted to add. So just to have it in mind that we need to be creative as lawyers. We need to be creative to produce incomes to help us during the pandemic.
Yeah. Solidarity, and it's needed, and also agreements between the parties, which moves us to a next guideline at FIFA. You already approached the subject, but there's always it's very interesting subjects that demand a lot of talk about. So FIFA also encourages on the guidelines that clubs and employees find collective agreements to overcome the current crisis, such as salary reductions, because with salary reductions, like Lucho mentioned, the business is allowed to keep on running instead of spending all its money right now. And also making a note to the transfer market, I agree that we will see smaller amounts this next transfer windows for two main reasons. One, because clubs that are buying don't have enough means to spend right now, because they are not receiving as much money as they expected with TV rights, commercial rights, ticketing. And also clubs that are in a difficult situation and they need the money desperately. If they estimate they have a player that it's worth, I don't know, 10 million euros, they would be willing to sell for a lot less, because they need money flow in their banks to honor their obligations. So the next transfer windows, I don't believe the next 2-3 that we will see huge amounts as we did when Neymar or Mbappe went to Paris, or even now Haaland to Dortmund. I don't think we will see such amounts. And regarding the agreements in Brazil and Portugal, clubs are finding agreements with their players. The players' union is invited also to participate. In Brazil, it was more of an individual thing, each club with its players, and some clubs had salary reductions of 25%, others even more, closer to 40%. And something that's interesting on that topic, before I give you guys back the floor, is that the economical aid from the state, that states are providing economical aids to companies and to businesses, which is the reality of football. And here in Portugal, a law was passed, because this does not only attack health and sports, which is what we are discussing, but economic as well, that if companies and businesses have an economical reduction of 40%, they may request governmental aid. And the league, the Portuguese league, the league, which is the one that organizes first and second division, which are the professional leagues. After that, we have it's not mandatory to be professional. Announced that they estimate a loss of 60% of their revenues in comparison to last season, to last year. So in a way, they clubs and the league adapt to the requirements of the governmental aid. And we've seen some clubs, one specific first division club already requested for the help of the government. And this help consists of the government paying 70% of the employee's salary and the employer paying 30%. But the thing is that this aid has a limit, which is lower than 2,000 euros, and players earn a lot more than that. So clubs, even with the aid from the state, will need to pay more than what would be the 30%, because players will not be earning, I don't know, 3,000 euros. They earn more than that in first division football here in Portugal. So that's the situation right now, where clubs and players are invited to discuss salary reductions to maintain the businesses. And again, first and second division teams are very important in that scenario, because they are the ones that help amateur sport, which is third division lower, because these do not create as much profit as first and second division. And we have a similar situation in Brazil. First and second division are the ones that pay for their costs. The third division onward needs the help of in Brazil, it's the FA that organizes competition, so the help of the FA. Here in Portugal, the FA provided help to these amateur clubs. And I would like to know from your experiences, your thoughts on the subject, and also a very unique situation, which is the situation from Spain, when Jaime has the floor, to discuss ERTE, which is a hot topic right now. So please, Enrico.
So thank you. Well, I think that financial aid for team of professional team can be useful only if we're not talking about giving money to the player or giving money to the club. I think that the only possible help, that financial aid that a club should receive or want to receive, is less tax. Because of course, like, they're paying tax on, they're paying a lot of tax, especially like professional clubs. They're paying a lot of tax on the salary of the players. So I think that eventually a financial aid that the state can give to professional clubs can be cut their tax and allow them to pay it like in a different phase, when eventually everything would be normal again. Also because most of the Serie A club have a lot of revenues from the stadium. I always pick the Juventus because it's actually one of the probably the most important club at the moment in Italy. And you can see that actually their revenue is like 70 million or something like that. So on the season ticket. So I think that the only aid that actually can be useful for the clubs, professional club, can be tax cut of the taxes, and eventually give money, or the money that they should give to the club, to the professional club, to give it to the other clubs that are like in a lower division. That can be like the case of third division or semi-professional players, because that is actually something that I want to discuss because there is a decree called Decreto Cura Italia that allows actually semi-professional players and the stakeholders that are in the semi-professional leagues, so coach or staff of the coach, to receive an amount of 600 euro. And I think that can be useful, in this type of situation, especially if you consider that their year income is less than is around 10,000 euro, something less than that. So of course, in these circumstances, like 600 euro can make the difference. If you give this money to somebody, like to a young player, that can make the difference, for him. So I think that in this case, the richest club or the state, the help, the aid of the state should be more based on semi-professional or lower league. I mean, if we have to also understand that really 80% of the Serie D club, that is our fourth category, is the semi-professional category, will be probably bankrupt at the end of this year, because sponsor will not pay. They don't have revenues from the stadium. It's really like a complicated situation. It's something that will affect a lot all the system, you know, the Italian soccer, the Italian football system. So all these young players that are playing now as a semi-professional, they may be probably the future star in Italy, or they will turn professional somehow. Not all of them for sure, but most of them will start playing in third division. And then, you know, if they're good, we have a lot of example of players that start from the bottom and then they reach the top. I always think about Luca Toni, that is a former Italian player, world champion. He used to play until 26 years old, 27 years old in Lega Pro, and then he become like world champion. So we also have to understand that the lower category are the fan base of the Italian football. So of course, when you are 18 years old, 17, you want to emulate your favorite player. So you want to just, score, and you just do the Ronaldo move, you know? So this is something that actually we need to pay attention on that, because it's really the base of the Italian football. If that base fall apart, I really believe that everything will fall apart. So the state aid, I think that I also read different articles that they were saying that maybe, also agent can, participate on creating a fund to help these semi-professional clubs. And the same should do like the Serie A club, because actually Serie B club, the one they can afford it, of course. And this should be like money from the top that goes to the bottom. So I think that actually all the first division, inside the first division, there is a lot of money. So we're seeing salary of 12 million, 6 million, 5 million. So we're talking about a huge amount of money. And that wealth should be also somehow try to spread in the lower category, especially now that we are facing this period of crisis. And I'm pretty sure that things will not be like before, unfortunately, because this, as Santi said before, this is really something that will affect the football world in a long time period. It's not like something that, as you said, Andrea, we will not see crazy this transfer window, because we may not see eventually transfer, because we don't know if a player is free or not, because he has a contract that it would be probably extended for the next season, but he can just move if he if he didn't find an agreement with the club, he just can move to another team, So I'm afraid that things will be different, especially in the following year and the following part of the season. We will see probably empty stadium. We will see, as Lucio said, a crazy measure of to avoid the virus. So eventually a lot of control. That I wanted also to ask to Lucio, how you think if in Lega Pro they will respect this, or they will not be able to do that. So eventually they will never start again. Lega Pro.
I think, yeah. Do you remember we were discussing this also the other day? And I think that if in Serie A and in Serie B, it is possible for the clubs to comply with all of these all of these rules that have to be followed. I think that considering the situation of the Italian Lega Pro, Italian Serie C, in which like most of the clubs have a lot of debts, I think it's not even possible like to realize all of the structure. I think that it's impossible for many clubs to pay all of these things, like the sanitization, like the cleaning, the professional cleaning, let's say, of all the training camp, of the gym. So I think that they need a huge, big help from the government. I think that the Italian government should help, especially clubs of the Serie C, of the Italian Serie C, probably giving them some money, for sure, reducing the taxes they have to pay, as you correctly said before. And it is something that the Serie C president was saying even in the past, that it's like it's sure that in order to go on with Italian Serie C, which is considered professional, clubs have to pay less taxes, because otherwise they are like on their ways to fail. They will go on bankruptcy, like the hundreds of cases we experienced it in the last years. So I think that the government should establish some kind of extraordinary guarantee fund, like some social safety nets. And I think that it will be the only way to let Italian Serie C, and also I will say Serie B, continue. I think it's the only way. But because when we think about football, we do not have to think only about the football players. This is something that I want to highlight, because imagine that only in Italy, I mean, only in the Italian Serie A, there are more than 1,500 workers for the clubs. I'm not considering the football players of the youth team or of the first team. I mean people who work for the clubs, such as gardeners, medical staff, coach staff, whatever. So imagine that a club like Juventus has 250 people as workers. So they have to pay 250 salaries, and they pay every year 14 millions of euros only for the workers' salaries. It's like a huge quantity. So I think that the only way to, so it is Juventus, so it is a club which can afford this kind of expenses, but there are smaller clubs like Brescia, Lecce, which have, of course, less expensive, but less incomes, less revenues for sure. And this coronavirus will lead to very sad consequences for them. So in my opinion, first of all, the football players of Italian Serie A have to think that they have to reduce their they have to accept the reduction of their salaries, maybe on the quantity of 20%, because only in this way many clubs can go on. And so I think that should be this kind of difference. Football players of Italian Serie A should accept this reduction, while football players of the second and first division should have an help from the government, and maybe from a fund that is made of money made of the not only of the help of the government, but also like the help of the federation, because a kind of Marshall Plan for Italian football, as the one we experienced in Italy after the Second World War, and that gave us a boost to become one of the most important and countries in Europe. So I think that the reduction is of the salaries of the Italian football players of Serie A is the key, is the only way to go on with this football, and I think that's it is the only way to succeed and to try to keep coronavirus behind. What do you think about it, guys?
Yeah, just letting Santi add before we move to Erte with Jaime.
Okay, well, to our friends at Calle Serrano, well, I believe that we need to be bold. We need to be maybe a little bit aggressive. Maybe some things that it has been implemented on the regulations. Maybe until the situation, I mean, the coronavirus is managed. I've heard some options like, for example, reduce the financial fair play that is made by FIFA.
Sorry, Santi, it's just your audio. It's cutting a little bit. Like I don't know if it's just for me.
It's for everyone. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's, okay. Let me see. Okay. Till I fix it, you go ahead, please.
So yeah, so please Jaime with Erte and also your impressions on what we've been discussing so far.
Okay. First, I would like to say that I partly agree with Enrico in this matter of the government aid program. I think they are not made for professional players because, for one reason, 1,400 euros means nothing for players. However, this money for non-professional footballers in second division B or in third division could be very helpful for them. But I think for clubs, for professional clubs like Real Madrid, Barça, all these clubs in Spain, is a good measure because, and I think they are entitled to invoke this measure because they have been paying taxes, very high taxes to the state. So now they are going through a very difficult moment. I think they are entitled to invoke this help, this aid program. That's for. Okay.
Jaime,
do I start? Yes,
Jaime, excuse me. So, what do you think eventually, if smaller club are always being like a source for biggest club? So, I think that should be fair if they try somehow to help. Of course, in this kind of crisis situation, everybody is, feel it. Everybody has problem. But I'm pretty sure that clubs like Barcelona, like Real Madrid, like Atletico Madrid can actually give money to lower division club. Of course, it's not their duty. It's not somebody that say like, okay, you're rich, so you have to pay. But I still think that, it's a matter of solidarity. And we're talking about multi-billion industries here. It's not we're talking like about a little club. So I think that now is the time to give for this club that always like get, from small club, as we said before, as also like Santi said before, probably the prices will go down. So because smaller club will need cash flow. So if Barca knock on the door, it's like, okay, your player is like worth 10 million. I give you 5. They will say yes. And I think it should be like the other way around. Like, okay, we are in a situation of crisis. Let's try to have a solidarity fund, as Lucho pointed out, that involves all the first division club and also the federation. What do you think?
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. Clubs have to help. It's moment to be solidary. But the first step is the first responsible to make this first step are the players. If a club cannot make money from the TV rights, the sales, the ticket sales, but still paying the players' wage, they they cannot afford everything. If the player accept to cut their salaries, then the club will be in a good position to help smaller clubs, to help hospitals like they are doing. Because as long as I know in the medias have been reported, all the clubs are giving test bed material for doctors. So as long as I know, clubs are doing their best to help in these difficult moments. But first of all, are the players who have to accept the cut of the salary. Is the highest the salary of the player represent I I don't know if I'm wrong if I say that the salary of the players represent more than the 50% of the club's incomes. Sorry, incomes. Man,
Yes, sure, sure, sure. You are right. You are right. I can tell you about the Italian situation. I took some notes just to be more clear, and I can tell you that, for example, in the salaries of the football players in Italian Serie A are about more than 1 million. So you can imagine that only, for example, Juventus and Inter pay the wages of their players of a quantity of in total like 120 millions of euros. Inter 140 millions of euros. La Roma. So as you were correctly saying, we all know that the wages of the players are like the most expensive things for the clubs. So I think that professional football players of at least of the first division clubs of the big five leagues have to accept this reduction. And for example, today I read an article where the Udinese president Magda Pozzo was saying that she was shocked about the fact that his players were in doubt if accept or not this reduction. They were complaining with the union, with the Italian Football Players Union about this reduction. But I think that in this case, managers and players have to follow the FIFA guidelines, and because we all know that FIFA say that it's time of collaboration, of unity, of solidarity. So as you were saying before, football players and managers of the first division clubs have to take the first step and to give the example, because only if they are all united, they can help professional football to go on.
Yes, that's right. I agree with your impressions, and the subject is very interesting, and we can go on speaking about it on and on. But just to Santi and Jaime still have impressions to add, and also Enrico and Lucho, I would ask you, Santi before. We see your connection, and then Jaime, Lucho, and Enrico to give your impressions, your concluding impressions on the salary reduction, the governmental programs to help overcome the situation, as well as your goodbyes until our next event, in which we'll discuss other topics important to the sports industry right now. So please, Santi.
Yeah, well, I hope my connection is better now. I don't know if you can hear me better.
It's still cutting a little bit. If you speak slowly, maybe we can get.
I think it's because I'm losing battery. So well, yeah, sadly, then I will have to say goodbye for today because I'm losing battery. So maybe that's a problem. But I know you're in good hands with our goalkeeper Enrico. So well, then I will have to say goodbye for this time. Hope to see you again. It's been amazing talking to you, and well, I'm sorry for the technical problems.
Thank you. It's technical problems happen every day, and we heard your impressions on the majority of the subjects, and thank you for that. And we'll have other opportunities to share more. So
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye, Santiago. Just let's talk about a little bit of ERTES, because I prepared my presentation with the example of Ever Banega, a Sevilla midfielder who's very close to finish his contract. The 30th of June, he will be free or not. We don't know yet, but it seems not. It seems he will play with us, with Sevilla, until the season is finished. But Sevilla presented an ERTE in front of the labor authority because of the force majeure. As it say in the article you submitted me through LinkedIn, Andre, the force majeure is not clear and very legal for football clubs, because it's made the force majeure to the companies which their activities are have suffered a shutdown. And as you know, a football club and sports entity is not just to play every Sunday a game, an official game. They do more activities and they make money from another sources. It's true that the most important is the official game on Sunday and the TV right of this day, but the two royal decrees that develop the suspension of the contracts said that for temporary contracts, like the footballer contracts, the remaining time before the coronavirus crisis, the coronavirus pandemic, have to be just as soon the coronavirus is eliminated, these months where the league or the activity was stopped, employees have to recover and have to perform the months remaining. So in my opinion, Sevilla doesn't even need to renew the contract of Banega, because Banega has to perform the last months so far because it's just 1 month, but it looks to be longer. So in Banega, this player who have suffered an ERTE, this government measure, will have to perform even if their contracts are ended at 30th of June. That was my point of view in this Vanegas case.
Yes, and also it raises a situation that FIFA always has to take into consideration, which is the authority of the country. The FIFA governs football, but there's always the specificity of the law of the country and what the country determines. So it's an interesting situation where Spain, being one of the most, if not the most important country football-wise, has a very strong argument in determining how to protect one of its main products, as you mentioned before, that it's so relevant to the national income, the revenues related to football. So it's an interesting situation for us to compare what FIFA expects and what the countries are applying.
Yes, under the Spanish legislation, for Sevilla, for the club, it's going to be very difficult to renew the contract because the club and the player need to reach a mutual agreement. Not possible an unilateral decision of the club to renew the contract. No, it's not possible. Banega and these players will be in a strong position to negotiate. Also taking into account that in my example, the Argentinian player has already signed a very lucrative contract with Al Shabab, a club from Saudi Arabia. So my question is, who's gonna pay? Who's gonna compensate the player when he was supposed to be earning 10 million per season from 1st July, but now because of the pandemic and the FIFA guidelines, the Spanish regulation, he's kind of forced to stay with the club, who pay this compensation.
So I think actually that all the contract that they already signed, it's not they are invalid. They would be valid, but starting from the end of the new season. So eventually he just have to decide if he wants to stay and play until the rest of the season and extend his contract until the end of the new season and then move, or just don't renew the contract and don't play. If I'm correct, Andre.
Yes, that's the type of discussions that we'll raise right now. Like Jaime said, he's an Argentinian player in a Spanish club trying to move to Saudi Arabia. So we have a very international dimension right there. And even though it's really relevant what Spain determines, he could argue that before CAS, for instance, there's an international and economical discussion at hand, also FIFA. So for us sports lawyers, it will be a very lucrative period, I imagine, because of all of the disputes that will arise. And as I said before, like, please add your thoughts and already say your goodbyes so we can start preparing our next session.
According to this, I would like to add my last thoughts. And talking about like the national laws, we do not have to forget that the work agreements between players and clubs are under the national law, because if there is not the international dimension, I mean, we are talking about contract under the national law. And in this case, we can say that if for example, the club, if the football players do not accept the agreement with the clubs, the clubs will be entitled to unilaterally reduce their salaries according to one specific article of the Italian Civil Code, which is called in Italian eccessiva impossibilità occorsa. Quindi in English it could be translated as objective impossibility occurred. In the worst scenario, I will say that according to the article 1467 of the Italian Civil Code, the clubs will be even entitled to terminate the contract for excessive burden occurred. But we all know that, I mean, it's not useful for clubs to terminate their contracts with the football players in this way, because football players are an asset for the clubs. So I think that no club wants to leave them for free. And so I think that even if formally Italian national law and labor law will let clubs reduce or even terminate the work agreements, the labor contracts with the players, I think that in reality this will not happen, and it's unspeakable that football players and Lega Serie A, Lega Serie B, Lega Serie C will reach an agreement of a reduction for talking about Serie A football players, because it is like the most convenient agreement, and it is, as I already said before, the only way to let Italian football go on, even if I think that the future 2 or 3 years will be very, very difficult. And I think that talking about transfer agreements, there will be a lot of exchanges. So clubs will start to do, like we say in Italian, prestito, or in Spanish, préstamos, because it will be more convenient for all of them.
Just to say goodbye, I wanted to add that, in my opinion, we are living a paradox. Those players who are about to finish their contract on 30th of June, last year and in other times, they should be in the strongest position to negotiate. But this year, on 2020, they are the most affected party. That's all.
So just to concluding, I mean, I think that we are facing a situation that we can just have hypotheses about it. I think that the most important thing, as Lucio said, is to first to find an agreement and to understand the gravity of the situation, and that the union of the player will just let understand the players themselves and the club will sit on the same table and discuss to have a reduction of the salary, and I think that will be possible, especially knowing the situation that we're living now. I'm more concerned about the extension of the contract, honestly, because especially in lower division, there are a lot of players that are just there for 6 months for a season, and that they would probably don't want to stay there to continue the season. So we will find a situation where a club will lose like 10 players, 12 players, and I think that is really something crazy. And fair competition will not be possible, in my opinion. I also want to say that I'm very curious to see how every federation, every national federation will decide about promotion and relegation. Jaime already told us that in Spain they stopped the championship and they just left the playoff. I don't know also if they play out eventually. No. So this is something that is really that I'm really curious to see how it evolves, because of course there are like clubs that have like huge advantage. I'm taking an example in Serie B in Italy. There is Benevento that has a lot of points, more than the second one, so probably it's already like almost mathematically promoted. And on the other end, there are clubs.
20 points. 20 points more than the second one. More or less like Liverpool in Premier League.
So you understand that it's actually very likely that they will be promoted. And on the other hand, there are clubs that are like, they have very little points and that probably they would be relegated. So how the federation will react? They will just open to the clubs that are in the promotion, like in the first or second division, first or second in the graduatory will be automatically promoted in Serie A, and they will stop the relegation, or they will actually do the same thing also, like for the lower division, you know, like the team of Lega Pro, there are like 15, 20 points in advantage from the second one. How did that will happen? Like, and this is not only in Italy, it's worldwide. So we're not talking only about like the trophy, but what about the Champions League position? That, as Andreas, you mentioned before, we're talking about a lot of money. We're talking about probably the money that they need to buy the new player for the new season. So we'll just stop, you know, just like, okay, if we don't go on, the graduation will be the graduatory will be the same as now, like the championship is over. And on this aspect, I think that the first division will manage to finish the league, so we will not have that problem. The real problem, I think, will be with the lower division, and that I'm very curious to see how you know, this will end, because there's nothing about you know, this on the FIFA regulation, and also UEFA actually is very vague about the after Belgium decided to end the season. They just state that you know, they should every national association should wait, but nothing on how this will happen. So I'm very curious to see the evolution on this aspect.
It will be interesting to see that what we've seen in some countries in the past in unusual situations. From what I can recall here in Portugal specifically, is you having, not for this season, but last season, a club that was in third division was judicially put in first division because it shouldn't have been relegated in the first place. They were relegated because of a sanction, but the sanction was overruled. So what happened was, this specific year, the first division had an extra place. And in the next year, then instead of relegating 2 teams, they relegated 3. They tried to balance. And in Brazil, when the league decided to change size, we went from 24 teams on a couple of years to just 20. So we relegated more than, I think that's how it's going to work, but it will be interesting to see how each national association is going to react to that.
I actually agree with you, because I really think that the only solution, because there are clubs that did a lot of investment to go and to go up the category, you know, and it's just not fair that they just say like, no, the championship is over, you know, anybody goes up and everybody get relegated. So I really think that the only possibility can be to extend the number of teams from each category, and of course the next season make it also like relegate more team. That I think that can be the best solution, and also the honestly the fairest one, because the validity of 24 25 games should be keep in mind, you know. And with this, I will also thanks everybody that listened to this very interesting conversation, actually. And I want to also thanks you guys, my colleagues, for this nice talk that we had. And hopefully we will do another one soon, and looking forward to that. So thank you, and here you are.
Yes, thank you all. It was a wonderful chat, and I'm really happy we managed to do that. We have a lot to share, and it's good that now we have this channel to do so. And thank you very much for all of your impressions, for all of your views with our different backgrounds, our different areas of acting, different regions of the country as well. And the idea is to have more and more of that, more and more people from different areas, be it in sports law, in marketing, in TV rights, within clubs, federations, to share their thoughts. And we'll have more meetings like this in the near future. So please stay tuned, and goodbye. Thank you very much. Ciao.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye. It was a real pleasure. Hope to see you very, very soon. We have a lot of interesting topics to discuss about. Can't wait.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye.